Hello, and welcome back to Animal Audit Corner, where I bring you stories about Scientology and possible other cult stories. All week, I've been bringing you this same exact story. I'm gonna have to apologize for them. I keep messing up. And now I want to fix the stories. And plus, when I went back to do it again, it was just too dark and there were just one too many sound effects in the background. So I'm going to have to do this story just one more time. So bear with me. Last time, and then I promise I'll throw in the towel like you guys want me to. This is about the fair game practices that Scientology creator L. Ron Hubbard brought to everybody in 1965. The practice was created, he created it to actually deal with all the critics that Scientology deemed as evil. They used this practice on former members, critics, and journalists. This is an unusually and very dangerous practice that they have in their criminal organization. Hurting people through fair game is the most worst thing that L. Ron Hubbard ever created. When they fair game, they would stalk, harass, and intimidate their victims, and even cause vandalizing their property. It's horrible. If it's a critic, like protesters, they would get their members to attack them by using unusual tactics to attack them. OSA, or the Office of Special Affairs, and David Miscavige would send private investigators to go after them. They would find out where they live and drive to their place of residence and park right outside their house. Then when the victim leaves the house, they would start to follow them from one place to another. Some people know that they're there and some actually don't. It's horrible. They get paid over $1 million. Well, this is Talent Security, the company. OSA and David Miscavige pays them over $1 million to go stalking after their victims. They send out their private investigators and pay them $10,000. Those guys would get their money from a special affairs office. Of course, I read that already. Also they would actually go through other people's garbage, and if they don't have it and the sanitation worker has it, they will track them down and buy back their trash for $20. You know what? Tell you the truth, I think that's very cheap. So, sanitation workers, if you run into a Scientology private investigators, guess what you should do? Hold out for $500. If they don't give it to you, say, forget it, I want $500. and take off with it. Don't even bother with it. And they would get, Osa and David Miscavige would get their money from their members. And some of them don't even have that much money because David Miscavige gives them very little. And they manage to squeeze it out of them anyway. And if it's a wealthy member, they just give it. They don't ask questions, they just give it. And that's sad. But you know what? They're being very stupid. They think it's going towards a very worthy cause, which it's not. They will use tables and chairs to block doors and just squeeze money out of people. In Los Angeles, protests, they use also tax-exempt status to hunt down protesters. In Los Angeles, protesters were swatted because Osa decided to call the police and tell them the protesters were firing guns. Of course, they went after them thinking, hey, there's a crime and we're going to a crime scene. But little did they know, after they swatted them and pat them down later, they found out there is no gun. Then the police went into the streets. After the SWAT, the police did no investigation towards the whole entire incident. It's dangerous to be swatted. One of the victims was a minor under the age of 18. And the reason for this is because they're on Scientology's payroll. They work for them. And they do it also while they're in the uniform and not outside of wearing that. Now, they weren't following specific rules of the police department. You're only supposed to wear it when you're working as a police officer. Other than that, if it's an outside job, they're not allowed to wear it. Because if they wear it, the public will go up to them thinking, oh, wow, here's a police officer to help us, where in reality, they're working for Scientology in uniform when they weren't supposed to. They were supposed to be out of the uniform. That's the reason why the LAPD won't do an investigation on them. Scientology will stop at nothing to get even with people who think they're saying horrible things about Scientology, which, guess what? They do horrible things, and they want to get even with them. Now, guess what? Everyone's got a critic. There's no escaping them. But with us, we just brush it off, just move on with our lives. But Scientology and David Miscavige, including Osa, would hang on to it and go after the people who says horrible things about Scientology, which is all true. They've been getting away with it for years. And before the internet, people were like, oh, I'm sorry. I was one of those people. I was sympathizing with them until one day truth comes out. And they don't like it. In fact, they hate the internet. But ultimately, they will always use the fair game practice on former members, journalists, and their critics. Where overall, some of the Scientology used as slaves to get $50 out of them, which they can't afford. With other churches, if a person doesn't have money and is in poverty, they don't squeeze it out of them. They would understand. Scientology does the opposite. Then finally, some of the LAPD won't do an investigation on their cruel practices. Because guess what? They're on Scientology's payroll. Then in conclusion, how Scientology uses the fair game practice on people is so pathetic. Now, in the real world, if we were to do that, we would get arrested. Now, the reason for this is because they have the politicians, and as you can tell, the LAPD sympathizing with them, saying, oh, wow, they sound so exciting. They're doing all these wonderful things, which in reality, they're not. They're not hearing the other side of the story. What they're doing is infiltrating the government, which I'll save that story for another day. Now, not only people get fair game, but animals get fair game as well. Now, before I told you that journalists are also a part of the fair game. And this story just will tear you. This story is about Joel Sapple. He's a journalist from the Los Angeles Times. He's been with the publication for 26 years back in the day when he was there for that long. He just loves his job and takes great pride in it. But he would pay the ultimate price for working for a great paper like the Los Angeles Times. There are organizations and people out there that would want to make an enemy out of people, including the journalists. And Joel knows that firsthand. That's what Scientology did. They made an enemy out of him. Now, how many churches do you know that would make an enemy out of people? Not many. Not the cults. not the people who don't practice black magic, because black magic is a dark art and they hurt people. But churches don't. Joel was doing an expose on Scientology about the founder, L. Ron Hubbard. It was an expose on the story they did about Xenu. That was the expose. Sapple and his co-writer, he had a co-writer. His name was Bob Wilkos, who did a 2-part story on them. Both of them gained notoriety when they wrote the story, which is fabulous because any journalist would dream about something like that. I would just pat myself in the back and say I did it. Like Paulette Cooper before them, after the story got published into the general public, they started to get fair gained. One day Joel, back in his earlier years, got a dog years ago before he got a job with the Los Angeles Times as a graduation present that he got from the Huntington Beach shelter. The dog was a female German Shepherd. He would name her Crystal. He would have her through college and on through his marriage with his wife, Linda. Linda even fell in love with Crystal. The dog was their pride and joy in both their lives. They just loved her to death. Both Joel and Linda would feed her, walk her, and would take proper care of her. Then one day Crystal fell ill, which was so baffling because those two gave her all the care she needed and really, really took the proper care for her. And then that happens. Linda called him while he was out of town with the frightened sound in her voice saying that their dog fell ill. And she made the call from the veterinarian's office. The veterinarian was trying to figure out why she suddenly got sick. She was in disbelief that their dog that got sick. Then at the same time, while the doctor was working on Crystal, he was checking her out, finding out what was happening, because the way she got sick was just so unusual. She would appear weak with muscle tremors, and her symptoms was nausea. She kept throwing up. Muscle tremors and shaking. Now, Crystal's doctor said that she died from some kind of poisoning, even though he didn't really know for sure what kind of poison she digested. But former Scientologist Mark Headley from Born for Good, a YouTube channel he has with his show, Claire Hadley, would say they would use rat poison for their fair game practice. They would put it in their food. He states one of their tactics would be put rat poison in dog food. And then have them bleed out, which is a horrible way for anyone and anything to die from. After Joel's dog died, he was trying to think who would want to kill his dog, Crystal. He thought of one organization that did this. Scientology and their leader, David Miscavige. Now, he didn't really directly see them put anything in her food, but they did, even though he didn't see it happen. This is one of Scientology's tactics. Even though Sappo worked for the Los Angeles Times for 26 years when this happened, he would expose Scientology at the same time while doing the story. Of course, that's what accidentally happened. He exposed it. And Scientology don't like that. Where ultimately his female German Shepherd that he would name Crystal, where he had her through college and right on through his marriage to Linda, got sick. Also, nevertheless, Joel's wife, Linda, called Joel from the veterinarian's office and told him that she was sick. Now, Crystal doctor said that she died from some kind of poisoning, even though the veterinary didn't enclose what kind of poison it was. But overall, Crystal will be remembered for being fair game from Scientology, that she would be used because it appears that way. And that's how they would use the fair game practice, which is horrible. Well, that did it for that story. I'll see you in a bit.